What's up, Regina? We are live with a local Regina celebrity, Linden Wilcock. He is the co-founder of Wheelhouse Cycle Club here in Regina. And Linden, we're really thrilled to have you on the show. I caught one of your spin classes last night, and man, that was tough.
You still walking?
Nah, barely. Barely, but it's really cool to have you on the show. Kelsey and I are thrilled that you're here.
We're super stoked to have you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. What's your background? Where are you from?
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd say the first 24 years of my life was almost defined by being a hockey player, or at least that's how people might define me when they look back at it. And I've always loved sports. But then in university, while I was playing with the Cougars on the hockey team, I really started to leverage some, I think, natural marketing skills I had, because I believe marketing is a lot of common sense. And I actually mentioned this in a presentation today. I almost got typecasted as an entrepreneur before I was actually one, just because I was on a business case competition team in the entrepreneurship field. And then I started to think, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe I do like entrepreneurship, and maybe I should find something that is at the intersection of all my skills.
Yeah. So you were Regina born and raised?
No, I actually grew up in Mossbank, Saskatchewan, on a farm for the first 16 years of my life, and then kind of moved around for hockey before my family ended up moving into the city.
Really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And Wheelhouse, I know you have a partner in this.
Yeah.
How did this beautiful creation kind of come to
What
be?
do you think it's beautiful?
I mean, it's a pretty cool atmosphere you have going on here, and it's a really positive thing you're doing for Regina and for the people in the city. So we would like to know, the Inside Regina Project would like to know kind of how Wheelhouse and that idea was started.
Well, it's honestly, like, you talk about the atmosphere, and that part has evolved entirely. It wasn't like one day we're like, hey, this is the exact atmosphere we want to create, so let's spend the next 2.5 years doing that. It kind of came about naturally after Kyle, my business partner, sent me a message, slid into my DMs from Calgary and said, hey, I have an interesting idea / opportunity. And it's something he'd put a lot of thought into. He'd seen different iterations of in Calgary and on the West Coast, and thought, you know what, he's like, you know what, I'm from Regina. I've always wanted to come back to Regina because there's so much opportunity. And he was kind of just looking for that right person to complement his skill set. And I said, yeah, let's get to know each other, make sure the business partnership is right, because that's so important. So we had a bit of a courtship stage. And during that time, we decided that, our skill sets were complementary. We shared all the values we needed to share to at least start. And then through the stressful lead up to opening, we shared that we both valued a positive, inclusive atmosphere. And when we led preliminary rides in the basement while we were still doing construction, we were like, hey, we have to convince these people that this is going to be worthwhile, and we're going to build a community, and they're going to be an important part of it. So we just started high-fiving people. I'm like, hey, let's get up for this. And the high five kind of became a staple, both proverbially and literally, because it's who doesn't like a high five? Plus it represents that hey, we're rooting for you. We're all in this together. No one goes unnoticed.
And it's really, really cool way. We can tell in your business. Even last night was the first time I actually ridden one of your spin classes, but it wasn't because I hadn't heard you guys before. It's all over. Everyone's talking about it. You've created almost this standard. If you're an instructor here, it's a status. It's a cool status, and people are bragging about it. They're putting it on their Instagram profiles, all that stuff. It's I'm a trainer at Wheelhouse, and that's really cool, that culture you've created here as well. So walk us through a little bit about, you met Kyle, and business is a lot like dating and marriage, right? You literally are
totally.
With these people.
Yeah.
So you had to make sure Kyle's the right fit, and Kyle had to make sure you're the right fit, mutually. But talk about the business structure. How did you build this? What was
finances. We want to know where the money came from.
That's you financial people. That's you
I know.
do. So honestly, that's so interesting, and that's where Kyle, just one of the areas Kyle was so valuable in, because my head was spinning already. I was like, okay, well, I have this much. What else do we need? And you just need so much going into a business when you starting with like all these costs, like we needed bikes, we needed a space, we needed a renovation, we needed to hire some staff right off the bat. So, and Kyle talks about this a lot too. He says like even throughout his like consulting career, and like he was like a leader in university too that everyone kind of respected and was like, oh, he's just gonna be a CEO someday. Like he's just that personality, he has that knowledge, that work ethic. And we just thought, you know, Kyle's the kind of person who'll know where that money comes from. And even he was surprised when the money came from a variety of different sources. It wasn't just, hey, we've got 5 friends lined up and bam, 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 now we're good. Or walk into the bank, here's this business plan. You obviously believe in us and now we have this money. It's like no, we need more information, a lot more information. Yeah. Hey, yeah, I said we could probably do it, but I'm not actually the person who makes the decision, and the person who actually makes the decision said no, so you better try again. And it ended up being a variety of like friends and family, like interested investors, and like government programs and banks. So it was like across the board and took a lot of like.
It's a lot more difficult than people think it is to get something like this off the ground.
Yeah.
I think one thing that Sam and I and the Inside Vagina Project really values in general when you're speaking entrepreneurs and new business is good content.
Yeah.
Of course. And the fact that you guys didn't just slap together a room where you could put a bunch of bikes in and invite people to come and ride with you, the fact that you guys did do a reno and you invested in the bikes and your space and like the social that you had behind it is really, really important. So tell us, like, where did you guys get those values from? How did you get to the point where that became valuable to you when you were starting the business?
I think part of it was by necessity, because we wanted to start telling our story while we were still in those stages and provide more substance than I've been to many beautiful spin studios, yoga studios, a lot of spaces across the country, and sometimes you just get that feel like, oh, this exists and it's pristine, it's flawless. But since I don't know the story behind it, I'm kind of like, oh, like it might lack that feeling that I know we have and we try to communicate.
There's almost like a lack of a bond with places like that, hey? Like when you really know who you're riding with or who the people that are supporting your exercise and your fitness with, you get to know them and you appreciate them. Not because you're purchasing a product or a fitness lifestyle from them, but because you actually feel like you're growing with that company.
And I'm the kind of person who, and it might be my personality, but I also think it's a bit of a Saskatchewan mentality where you just want to feel a part of something. You want the person to ask you how your day is, and we recognize that. I recognize that in myself. So even before we opened, we had no studs up even in here, and we're like, hey, let's start a founders program, because not only do we want people to let us know that they want to be involved early for that security, but we also want people to feel like it's theirs. And I want this to exist for other people. I don't want it to be a place hey, I'm Linden and this is Wheelhouse and it's mine, because without the 10,000 people who've come through the door, without the first 25 people who have who said, yeah, I'm gonna be a founder, even though they came in here and they're like, oh, what, you want me to go down to the basement because it's not ready here, and this water heater's gonna drip on me while I ride with 24 people I don't know, and the only motivation I have to get through it is this high five while the motivator figures out how to motivate me properly. Honestly, it was scary, but it was I think we were lucky enough to have people kind of take on a sense of ownership right from the start.
A lot of people had faith in you guys too, right?
Yeah.
Not only your investors, but the clients that you guys had coming in the door too.
Yeah, it's very fortunate for that.
Yeah, big time.
So how do you foster your culture of the people here? Because it's so obvious that from talking to people around the city, word of mouth is so powerful with your business. How did you foster that culture to get people to share your message? And in 2 years, 2015, you guys started.
Yeah.
And you guys are taking over Regina in the fitness industry.
I think that's a bit of an overstatement.
Well, for youth anyway, for young people, definitely.
Yeah. I also talked about this today, and I think, I want to start by saying, very fortunate to have the people surrounding me right from the start who are oh, yeah, you're doing this? Yeah, I'd love to, come throw a coat of paint on the wall at 2 a.m. and listen to some music, and then people to say, yeah, I'll be a motivator, even though I have this athletic background that I'd like to apply to a bike, but I don't know how to yet, but yes, take me along for this journey. And like part of it was like the biggest part of it is that we're fortunate to have had those people around us and to continue to have those people around us. But yeah, there is an element of being like exhibiting to them that you believe in it, painting a picture of excitement, like I guess vision casting it's called, and saying like, and including them in the journey. Like to this day, we don't say, hey, this is what you do, you motivate and you impact 20 to 30 people every day. We say, hey guys, here's the goal. We want to be far-reaching, impact the city because we believe our atmosphere is incredibly inclusive and does the best job of setting people up for success. So yeah, there's like some vision casting in there, but most of it is honestly just being fortunate enough to be surrounded by so many amazing people.
Really cool. Yeah, and I again can't. It was so cool just being and experiencing this. So you've got a really good culture developing here, and you opened the new location when?
November 2016.
November 2016. Yeah. And how many people have come through the doors of that one?
Well, total I'm not sure the exact number, but it's an even amount of people come to either, like to each studio. So.
Are you guys thinking of expanding any again, or what's the vision now?
Yeah, like I mean, we have like some pretty lofty goals, but like right now it's all about making sure that the riders who come to these two locations get the best experience possible. And I think our time is best spent relentlessly improving that. It's tempting sometimes to be like, hey, like let's kind of like sensationalize things a bit and like go off to a new city or like look at another spot in this city, but it's like we have so many people we owe a great experience to that we want to make sure that we're constantly improving.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that you were a motivator before all of this started?
That's a really good question. I do think so. I think motivating and marketing go very hand in hand, and I'm sorry if that was your next question.
That's good.
But I think I've always been a marketer in that like I've analyzed what people respond to, and part of it's through experience, like working with other local companies. Like I worked for a mortgage broker for a while and did the marketing, and I was constantly analyzing how he built relationships with people, what was the difference between someone getting a mortgage through someone else, or like even working with Captive, where it's like event experiential marketing, where you're like you know what you're supposed to communicate to the hundreds of people you talk to on a daily basis, but there's slight changes you can make to what you're saying that like you recognize land with people differently. And like if you do that 100 times in a day, you can really analyze that data and be like, okay, that landed, I'm going to try that, or like I'm going to get to know this person and then respond according to what I've learned about them. So that's the marketing side of it. And really marketing is like getting people's attention and like convincing them to do what you want them to, believing that it's best for them. And motivating is convincing people to come along. Like our style of motivation is like coming along for the ride. And I think the best way to do that is to come from an authentic place. So it's like, what am I going through today? And saying like, I am going to lead you through this. I'm not a coach standing up there being like, do this, do this, do this, because I don't like that style of leadership. I think it should be more like the captain approach, where you're like, hey, I'm going to give you my everything, hop on my shoulders, we're going to get it through it together because we're bringing enough energy for ourselves and those around us. And I've always been fascinated by like what it takes to motivate people. And I think the experience in analyzing those data points, like, oh, that landed, that didn't land. And then the other important thing, coming from a place of authenticity, understanding what motivates me first, and then turning that around. I think that I've possessed motivational qualities that needed to be grown and still need to be grown. Yeah. So that's my answer.
I was going to say, I think you were probably always a motivator at heart. I think for the Wheelhouse, you probably had to step into a different part of motivating or nurture that part of yourself that allowed you to take the Wheelhouse where it's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite possibly true. Are you?
I wouldn't say I'm a motivator. No, I would say I'm like, if I knew myself, Kelsey, I would say I'm an observer.
Yeah.
So if I go to a place where I don't feel like I'm included or it's not welcoming for me, then I won't stick around very long. Right? So having an inclusive atmosphere is really important.
You know, I think that's in itself motivating, because I think all of us have eyes always on us. You know, even though we don't always know it, right? You can be doing whatever you think, and Instagramming and Snapchatting, people are going to be watching you, right? And I think as a leader in any, like you're self-employed, right? You've got clients, they look up to you. I've got clients, you've got your clients, right? And we all have people that look up to us. So I think we have to be careful, and we always have to make sure that we're kind of setting forward that positive image. Definitely. So I think like even if we're not necessarily motivators, I think people still watch what we're doing, right? And they still will take that, oh, well, he's being successful, Linden's being successful with this, I'm going to watch what he's doing. Or Kelsey's being successful, I'm going to watch what she's doing. And it might, it's...
If I wasn't a motivator, I would say, if not an observer, I would say I'm a nurturer. Yeah. So I can meet people and get them to a place where they feel that they can do other things.
Cool.
And I think that's really important as well. And obviously, I'm sure you have nurturers in Wheelhouse as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's so important, and that's probably an area where I can grow in, where it's like, and nurturing it takes time, it takes patience, it takes like maybe even going deeper. And I think the temptation is like to think that, oh, I can just go up there or like be in here and just like perform and people are going to respond to it. But I think even motivating requires that like nurturing, relationship building, showing a genuine interest in someone's
with the riders for sure. And not only with the riders, but with the other motivators, right? Like you as a boss have to be able to nurture them and make them feel like they can do this big thing for all the people in the rides, right?
Yeah, really cool. So, Linden, we went out for coffee a couple weeks ago and we chatted about all of this, and we're really happy that you decided to come on our show. And we want to leave just with this one thing. What piece of advice do you have for people who are looking to start, even if something similar to this, but their own business? What do they have to be doing to foster that successful culture?
Interesting. Really good question. I can think of three things right off the bat. I think the one that sticks out to me and comes to my mind first is those days that you put in the extra. And I know like entrepreneurs in general talk about it a lot. It's like, oh, the hustle, the hustle, the hustle.
Yeah.
But like sometimes you've hustled and then an opportunity comes up and you've already worked 12 hours and it's 7 p.m. and you're like, oh, and I used this example today in a presentation too, and it's like, and all of a sudden you look out and there's this beautiful sunset and you're like, oh, I have these 2 staff here, here's a bike, this is an amazing photo op, but by the time we get out of here, it's gonna be 10, I'm gonna have to convince them, I'm gonna have to do some editing later, and then before I know it, it's like 10 p.m. in the day, and it's like, oh my goodness, that was a day. And then I look back on it, and I look back on all the days that I put in extra, or like planned an event and lifted heavy things all day on top of the regular workload, and like those are the days that the greatest progress was made and the greatest impact was had on people. It could be like as simple as like those 3 staff who like had the photo shoot just started getting along so well, all of a sudden they're friends and they're like, oh, it was nice to be included, and the staff is more cohesive. And then after that, like with an event, it's like, oh my goodness, the event planning was so tough, but it went off amazingly and had the greatest impact on riders. So I'd say the takeaway there is, don't be afraid to put in the extra work, and when it feels the worst, it's probably going to yield the best results. So like, stay nimble, attack it head on.
Take advantage of your opportunities, right? Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.